Okay, so let's get defining insert. So it takes an index and a value. And the first thing we want to check is if it's a ridiculous value, if it's negative or if it's greater than the length. So we'll just do if index is less than 0. 0 is okay, but if it's less than 0, that's not okay. Or if index is greater than this dot length. And it's okay if it's equal to the length. That just means insert at the very end. So even in this scenario, the greatest index is 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. If we wanted to insert at 4, that's okay, even though there is no current index 4. So if that's the case, let's return false. Okay, so that's if there's a problem. Next, we have if the index is equal to the length. So if index equals this dot length. What do we do in that case? Well, we'll just do this dot push, the value. Okay, and I'm just going to return that, and we'll come back to this, because push on its own, if we pass in a value, we go all the way back up, where are you? It doesn't return true or false, it returns the whole list. So if we wanted to make everything true or false in this method, we have a little work to do, but let's leave it for now, because we have another scenario, which is if the index is 0. So if index is equal to 0, what do we want to do? We're going to call this dot unshift with the val. That inserts at the beginning. And we'll also return that, but unshift doesn't return true or false, it returns the entire list, so we need to address that later. But functionally, this should work. So if it's invalid, return false. If the index is equal to the length, call push with the value, push it to the end. If the index is equal to 0, call unshift, add it to the beginning. Okay, so now we have the rest of the logic. This means that the index is somewhere in the middle of our list. Let's say index of 2, which would give us this, 0, 1, 2, right here. Okay, so we need to find the item right before it. So we can just use our this.get index minus 1 and save that to a variable. I'll call it previous, right? So that is going to use get, which we defined up here, and it's going to give us the item right before it. So if we're trying to insert here, it will give us this node. So once we have the previous, the other thing we need to do sooner rather than later is make our new node. So we'll call it new node equals new node and pass in that value. Okay, so now we just need to connect previous to our new node and new node to whatever came after previous. So if this is previous, we're going to put our new node right here and connect previous to new node to this. Now the thing is, if we just went right ahead and did previous.next equals new node, there's a problem, which is we are erasing the connection to this node, because all that we had connecting this node to this one was .next on this, right? .next is equal to this. So if I change previous.next to be our new node, like this, and I try and set new node, this is gone because it used to be right here. So I need to use a placeholder variable. So I'll just make one called, I don't know, temp, var temp equals the current previous.next. So I'm just saving whatever was in there. All right, so we've now set previous.next to be the new node. So we've connected one part of it. Then we just need to set new node.next to equal temp, which is just holding what used to come after it. So if this is where we're inserting it right here, this is previous, okay? And so we're saving this to a temporary variable right here. And we're just inserting the new node here. And we're saying previous.next is new node.next is temp. And that's just placeholding it. So now we'd have 205 or whatever the number is we're trying to insert. 225, I think is what I said. Anyway, so all we have left to do now is add one to the length. So this dot length plus plus. And we need to return true because that means it worked. Okay, so if we run this code right now, if we look at our list, right now it's 4 items long. If we want to insert at index 0, we could do list.insert 0, and let's insert just the string first. If we look at our list, the first thing is now first, and that points to 100, which was the old head. All right, So if we do list.get, what's the last index we have in there? I think it's 4 right now. List.get 4 is the last thing. If we did 5, there's nothing there. So if we do an insert at index 5, the string last, this should add something to the very end, which will trigger our push right here. Notice that what we get back, well, it works, but what we're getting back is the whole list. And I mentioned it would be nice to get true or false, because if we do list.insert at index 1, I don't know, insert 37 at index of 1, it gives us true. If I do list.insert -1 or -2 something, it gives me false. If I insert at index 100, it gives me false. So it would be nice if it was consistent and always gave me true if the insert worked. So there's a simple way to change that. If you didn't want to expand these into separate, like you could do this, right? If index equals this.length, do brackets here, multi-line, and then move this inside and say this.pushVal, and you could just do, return true, for example. And we could do the same thing down here, or we can do the sort of sneaky thing, which is to put double bangs to doubly negate whatever comes back from push or from unshift. So what that means, it's a Boolean operator, not. So if we just had a string like hi, if we do not hi, no, not like that, it's going to give us it's going to coerce it to a Boolean value, give us the opposite of it. So if we do bang bang, it gives us true, if it's truthy. If we do bang bang of 2, it's true, but bang bang of 0 is false. So this is just a way of converting this to a Boolean. This.push is going to return the entire list. Unshift returns the entire list. So if we coerce it to a Boolean, it should just return true. So let's test it out. I just reran the code. If we now do a list.insert at index of 0 first, it gives us true. If we do at the end of the list, what is our last index right now? List.get, I think is it 4? Okay, so if we did 5, it would be the last thing. So if we do list.insert at 5, last, it gives us true. Versus list.insert at 100, it's not going to work. It gives us false. Okay, so that's insert. Personally, I would sort of put this on its a little new section just to separate these edge cases out. I think that's all I wanted to cover here. So that's insert. It's a little more complicated. Next, we're going to talk about remove, which is sort of like a sister to insert. That's coming up next.